one of the most important things to get right in the client experience is the onboarding process, because a lot of research shows that a poor onboarding experience can massively increase churn rates and reduce retention, because if they have a poor experience, they are less likely to stick on with you and they're going to get a negative experience from the off. We obviously want to try and avoid that. And by automating this process and having a system that sits behind the scenes doing all of the work for you, it makes sure that it's predictable, it's repeatable, it's the same every single time. And again, this applies whether you're an online coach, a nutritionist, a physio, lifestyle coach, therapist, it doesn't really matter. And again, the softwares that you use don't really matter too much. A lot of this is interchangeable, but the steps and the process should look broadly the same. So this is how it's going to look, and I'm just going to show you a quick overview from the point of payment all the way through to that first kickstart call and the onboarding status being set to complete for that client as well. Because a lot of the time you tend to see coaches who, once the payments come through, might then be kind of scrambling around to send emails and send links and update things in all sorts of different places, and it just feels a bit messy. And particularly if you take on more and more clients, that becomes a real admin headache for you, which you want to avoid. So you want to have a predictable and seamless process for every client coming through. So step one is obviously the payment. Lots of different softwares you can use, but Stripe's the most universally used and really easy to integrate with lots of different platforms, really slick. So that's what I'd recommend, as opposed to, say, a bank statement, which could, or bank transfer, which could just be, taking a long time. This is super slick. You can just send a link. It can be paid anytime, anywhere, which is really helpful. Now, what you can do at that point is use Zapier, automation software, to then automate the next step for you. So rather than, again, having to send details out to the client with all the contract details, you can automatically send that contract with everything they need to know within that for them to sign. And again, Zapier then takes the trigger of the payment. It then creates the next step, which is a sending of a contract. You can use PandaDoc, which is probably the most useful for most coaches in this situation, or things like DocuSign. Google do have their own e-signatures, but that is a more of a manual process. So again, we want to make sure anything we can do to streamline this and take our hands off of this process, the better. So either of those two would be really good. Now, the cool thing with platforms like this is that they'll send automatic reminders to the client to sign the contract, so we don't have to chase them up to do so. And most clients, if they're good and they're really forthcoming, will get it signed off really quick. But sometimes you do need to nudge people, and it'll do it for you. So it will send reminders at a cadence that you decide. And until that is signed, obviously you're just at this point here. You're not going to move forward. Once it's signed, though, Zapier can kickstart a few more processes off the back of that, and there's kind of two different streams to this. Now, the bottom one is applicable if you're an online coach or a PT and you're working with a client on a training platform. If you're working as a nutritionist, you might be using another software to actually deliver the program on as well. So I've added this as a secondary step. So I'm going to go through the top bit first of all, and then through the bottom component of this as well. So they've paid, they signed the contract. Next up, we can have a series of automations that is going to, first of all, update their lead status in your CRM to a current client. So if they're in your lead flow, in your dashboard, that lead then gets updated to become a current client. And again, lots of platforms you can use. I really like Notion because it's so simple and so intuitive, and you can do so much with it. So that would be a really good one for coaches. But you can use things like Active Campaign if you want more of an all-in-one landing pages, email provider, and CRM. But again, there's more of a bigger cost associated with that. So it doesn't really matter too much which one you use, but this should be the process that you stick to. So again, we're going to be added to the CRM. That's going to be updated to current client. We're then going to be sending that client through your email platform an email flow basically over 7 days. You can have an initial welcome email which explains welcome on board, here's what to expect, here's the link to the onboarding page, importantly, and you're then going to that's going to be basically tagged inside of the email provider. So that's going to go from contract, it's going to tag them in the CRM. If you've got a different platform from your CRM to your email, it's then going to tag them within that, and it's going to send this series of emails over 7 days. And within that email, it's going to have the link to the onboarding page. But a really cool thing is if once they've signed the contract, they get redirected automatically to the landing page, so that they're not only going to get the email with the link, but they're also going to be redirected there straight away. So they get all the information at a click of a button. As soon as they've signed the contract, they get sent straight to the page. We're not scrabbling around trying to find the link to send it across to them. They A, get directed to it straight after they've signed the contract, and 2, get an email instantly with a link to it within the welcome email as well. So that would be a pro move if you want to take that more automated approach. Now, once they're on the landing page, it's going to give them all the details that they need. Where to find things, a video from you, an explanation of what to expect in the first couple of days. And what we really need is also a link to booking a kickstart call. So that's where you're going to provide a quick overview of next steps, an orientation of where everything is found within the program. And again, you can use a software again like Calendly or Google Calendar, which means that they can book in at a time that suits them. They can see your availability, and they're going to get automated reminders before that call. And you can set it ideally at something like 24 hours and 2 hours before the call. So that way they're going to get reminded of when that call is coming up. And finally then, once they've had the call, we can set up an automation that once the call is finished, we're going to go back into our CRM. It's going to update that onboarding status of that client to complete. So not only are they then an onboarded client, but their status has been set to current client. They've had the onboarding experience that they've wished for. They've had all the information they could possibly need. They've always had the information at the tip of their fingers. It's always been clear what the next step is. And all within your own system, you're going to be able to see exactly where they are in that journey until the point of completion of onboarding, and they're inside the program. Now, the secondary stream I mentioned was adding to a coaching app. So if you're using something like Train Heroic or Trainerize for a training program, then this is where Zapier can actually add the client automatically again off the back of that contract signing to something like Trainerize. Train Heroic, although I like it as a platform, it is a manual process. So if you wanted it to be completely hands-off, no involvement from you whatsoever, then a platform like Trainerize is really good because it can not only onboard you instantly, but also allocate a program instantly as well, based on a set of rules. And that's for another video altogether. And then finally, once they've accepted the invitation or they've been onboarded, we can set up a final automation to email them with FAQs about how to use that app. So if you're using Train Heroic, for example, then there's a link within Train Heroic's website with FAQs for athletes, and you could send that to them so they know, okay, within this platform, this is, if I'm not quite sure, this is where to go. And it's obviously the best source of information because it's from the app itself. So a high level overview, that's what happens from payment to contract to onboarding to updating the CRM, the email flow, and then finally the kickstart call and a finalized onboarding process for that client. You know exactly where they are in that journey. And if you use all of that recommendation, you don't have to do a single thing from the point of payment, which is pretty cool. So they would pay, they would sign the contract, they would get the emails, they'd get sent to the onboarding page, they'd book their call, and after all of that, they'd join the training app, get the information they need in terms of how to use that app, and they'd be in a position to then be ready to go onto the program with an amazing experience, with you able to do whatever you want, trying to create content or work with clients, create programs, continue to build the business, whatever you need to do, but you're not having to do any of these steps because it can be set up in a really automated and professional way. So if you're interested to find out how this could all work for you and your platforms and the softwares that you use, just drop me an email down below with info@smartcoachsystems.com and we'll go from there.